So far, we saw how to summarize categorical data. I'm now going to show you how you can summarize quantitative data in a frequency table as well as a histogram. Remember, one of the questions I had on the survey was, what is the minimum annual salary in US dollars that would make you happy in your first job after graduation? So I've got all the data that you gave me right over here. Notice that this is a quantitative data, so it's not categorical. Now we're going to see how we can create a frequency table for quantitative data. Quantitative data, again, doesn't have categories, but we can create our own categories for our quantitative data. So let's do that. We're gonna select our data first. I have called this variable salary. And then we're gonna go to insert and create a pivot table and a pivot chart. It knows where my data is because I've already selected it. I'm going to paste the results in the existing worksheet, and for the location I'm just going to pick one cell. I chose C3 and click OK. Alright, so we've got our pivot table and pivot chart. Honestly, I don't really need the pivot chart because we're going to create a histogram. So I'm just going to click on the chart and get rid of it so we have fewer items on the page. And now for the pivot table, we have to fill out the fields. Just like before, we're going to bring a salary to the rows as well as bringing salaries to values. We want to make sure that we're actually doing a count of salary, not the sum of salary. So we're going to go to the field setting and change that from sum to count because we're creating a frequency table. So we want to have count. Then notice that there are way too many labels here for a salary because just this is a quantitative variable. So we're going to create our own groupings, our own classes. Notice the smallest number we have is 20,000 and the largest number we have is 120. So you need to decide how you want to create classes for this data. But I am thinking that we can go from 20 to anything below 50,000. That's one class. So you select this data, you right click on it, and you group it into one group. So you have group 1, which is all the data points between 20,000 and below 50,000. Okay, so my first class is between 20 to 50, so that's 30,000. Then my next class is going to be from 50 to 80. So we're going to select all the data that's between 50 and 80, right below 80. And we're going to group everything together. So again, right click and group. Then next from 80, we're going to go up to 110 because that's 30,000. So we're going to go up to 110. There's no 110, so I go up to 100, right click and group. And then finally, we've got this last grouping, which is above 110. But since you only have one observation here, you can't really group it. So if you try selecting and grouping the data, it shows you that you cannot group this because you've only selected one item. So you're not grouping it with anything. So we're just going to leave it as is. Now, notice in the rows, there's a new variable that got created. This is actually our groupings. The salary 2, that's our groupings. So we can get rid of a salary. So just click on it and remove field. Now, group 1, remember, was 20 to 50K. Group 2 was 50 to 80K. Group 3 was 80 to 110K. And the next group is 110K plus. Now we have the counts. So I'm going to call the row label salary. So just click on it and type salary. I want to say, instead of grand total, I just want to call it total. Instead of count of salary, I'm going to call it frequency. So I just type frequency here. And then I have the counts here. So 6 people out of 34 said they want a salary between 20 to 50. 22 said they want a salary between 50 and 80. 5 said they want a salary between 80 and 110. And 1 said they want a salary above 110. So this is useful information because we can see that the biggest class for us is between 50 and 80. Again, just like before, if you have frequency, you can also have percent frequency. All you have to do is to go to your fields and to the field setting and change your calculations from no calculation to the percent of grand total, and that gives you the percent frequency of each class. Now I'm going to go back to what I had before, so I'm just going to undo what I just did with the percent frequencies. And instead, I'm actually going to create another column with the percent frequencies. So what I do here is that I bring salary into values again. I go to the settings, make sure it is count. Then I go to the calculations and I change that to the percent of grand total. And now I have the percent frequencies, so I can rename this column as percent frequency. So again, with quantitative data, we don't really have categories, but we can create our own categories. Notice that the length of these categories should be the same. So if I selected my first category to be between 20 and 50, that's 30K. My second category must also have a length of 30K. So I go from 50 to 80, then from 80 to 110, and then from 110 to 140, in fact, but we didn't really have 140. So you could also call this one 110 to 140K. Oops. Yeah. Here you go. So we have our frequency table. Now let's create a histogram for our data. I'm going to select my data, my entire data. Then I go to insert and I choose a histogram right here. Excel automatically decided that it's going to group my data into 5 classes. But remember, in my tabular representation, I actually had 4 classes. So you have the option to change that. To change that, you're going to click on the values on the horizontal axis, and you can change the number of bins or change the bin width. So we're going to go with the width of the bins, and right now it is set at 20,000, but we're going to change that to 30,000. But actually remember that we don't want 30,000, we want just below 30,000. So we're going to go with 29,999. And there we go. So we've got 6 items in the first class. Let me zoom out here a little bit so that you can see what exactly this looks like and how they match. So we have 6 observations in the first class, we have 22 observations in the second class, 5 observations in the third one, and the final class has only 1 observation. So that's what we call a histogram. You can also rename this histogram of minimum annual salary. And there is your histogram of your quantitative data.